The penthouse apartment overlooked the glittering cityscape like a crown jewel suspended in the night sky. Victoria Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, her hand resting on the gentle curve of her 8-month pregnant belly, watching. The traffic lights blur into streams of gold and crimson far below. The baby kicked softly against her palm, as if responding to her restless energy. "He's going to be a night owl, just like his father," she murmured to herself, a wistful smile playing on her lips. Marcus had promised to be home by 9, but the digital clock on their Italian marble mantelpiece now read 11:47 p.m. Victoria padded barefoot across the heated hardwood floors, her silk nightgown flowing around her swollen ankles. She'd learned to move carefully these days, her center of gravity shifted by the precious cargo she carried. The nursery door stood slightly ajar, and she couldn't resist peeking inside at the completed room. Soft gray walls, a hand-carved wooden crib, and a mobile of golden stars that would soon dance above their son's sleeping form. Marcus Blackwood had built his tech empire from nothing, and now at 34, he was worth more than most small countries. But when he talked about becoming a father, his steel-gray eyes would soften with a vulnerability that made Victoria fall in love with him all over again. They'd met 3 years ago at a charity gala, where she'd been working as an art curator, and he'd been the mysterious billionaire everyone whispered about. "You're the only person at this party who hasn't tried to pitch me a business idea," he'd said, approaching her as she studied a Monet. "That's because I'm more interested in what you think of the brushwork than your net worth," she'd replied, not even looking at him. When she finally did turn around, his intense gaze had nearly taken her breath away. He was tall, with dark hair that always looked slightly disheveled despite his expensive suits, and a smile that seemed reserved only for her. Their courtship had been a whirlwind of private jets, candlelit dinners, and stolen moments between his business meetings. Marcus was demanding, passionate, and completely devoted to her. When he proposed on the rooftop of the building where they'd first kissed, Victoria had never imagined she could be happier. The pregnancy had been a surprise, but a welcome one. Marcus had been terrified at first, terrified of being the kind of father his own had been, absent and cold. But as the months passed, Victoria watched him transform. He read every parenting book he could find, installed the most advanced security system money could buy, and personally interviewed every potential nanny and pediatrician in the city. The sound of the electronic lock disengaging pulled Victoria from her reverie. She heard Marcus's familiar footsteps in the foyer, the soft thud of his briefcase hitting the marble floor, and the rustle of his expensive suit jacket. "Victoria?" His voice called out, lower than usual, tired. "In here," she called back, settling into the oversized armchair by the window. "How was the meeting with the investors?" Marcus appeared in the doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the hallway. Light, even exhausted, he was devastatingly handsome, the kind of man who could command a boardroom with just his presence. His dark hair was more tousled than usual, and his usually perfect tie hung loose around his neck. "Complicated," he said, walking over to kiss her forehead. His lips were warm, but there was something different in his touch, a hesitancy that made her stomach flutter with unease. "The Tokyo merger is hitting some snags. I might need to fly out there next week." "Next week?" Victoria's hand instinctively moved to her belly. "But the baby could come any day now." "I know, sweetheart. I'm trying to handle it remotely, but if I have to go, it'll only be for 48 hours. Celeste can stay with you." Victoria nodded, though the thought of Marcus's sister made her skin crawl. Celeste Winters had never approved of their marriage, always finding subtle ways to undermine Victoria's place in Marcus's life. But she forced a smile, not wanting to burden him with her petty concerns when he was clearly under so much stress. "You should get some rest," she said, struggling to push herself up from the chair. Marcus immediately moved to help her, his strong hands gentle on her arms. "Let me just shower first," he said, pressing another kiss to her temple. "I smell like stress and bad coffee." As he headed toward their ensuite bathroom, Victoria caught a glimpse of something that made her blood freeze. There, on the crisp white collar of his shirt, was a small but unmistakable stain, the deep crimson of lipstick. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she stared at the mark. It wasn't her shade. She preferred soft pinks and corals, colors that complemented her fair complexion and auburn hair. This was a bold, sensual red, the kind of color worn by a woman who wanted to be noticed, to be remembered. Victoria sank back into the chair, her mind racing. There had to be an explanation. Maybe someone had bumped into him at the restaurant. Maybe a server had accidentally brushed against him. But even as she tried to rationalize it, she knew she was grasping at straws. The shower started running, and she could hear Marcus humming, softly, the same tune he'd hummed on their wedding day. The sound that had once brought her such joy now felt like a knife twisting in her chest. She closed her eyes and tried to steady her breathing, one hand on her belly where their son was growing. This was supposed to be the happiest time of their lives. In less than a month, they would be parents. They had everything, love, money, a future bright with possibility. But as Victoria sat alone in their perfect apartment, staring out at the city lights that had once seemed so full of promise, she couldn't shake the feeling that her world was about to crumble around her. The crimson stain on Marcus's collar had been small, barely noticeable. But sometimes, Victoria thought as tears began to slide down her cheeks, it's the smallest things that destroy the biggest dreams. Victoria didn't sleep that night. She lay perfectly still beside Marcus, listening to his steady breathing while her mind churned with questions and possibilities. When dawn broke through their bedroom windows, she made her decision with the cold clarity that only comes from a heart breaking in real time. Marcus stirred as she carefully slipped from bed, his arm reaching automatically for her warmth. "Where are you going, sweetheart?" "Doctor's appointment," she lied smoothly, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "Just a routine checkup." He sat up, instantly alert. "I should come with you." "No need. You have that conference call with Tokyo, remember?" She forced a smile, already moving toward the walk-in closet. "I'll be fine." 2 hours later, Victoria sat across from Helena Cross in the most intimidating office she'd ever entered. The legendary divorce attorney was a petite woman with platinum hair and eyes like shards of ice, but her reputation preceded her like a weapon. She'd dismantled some of the most powerful marriages in the city, and her fee was astronomical. "Mrs. Blackwood," Helena said, her voice precise and calculated. "I'll be direct. Your husband is worth approximately $3 billion. Your prenuptial agreement includes an infidelity clause that would entitle you to 40% of his assets should he stray. Tell me about the lipstick." Victoria's throat tightened as she described the crimson stain, the late nights, the growing distance between them. With each word, her fairy tale marriage crumbled a little more. "We'll need that shirt," Helena continued, making notes on her tablet. "And I'll need you to be prepared for war." Marcus Blackwood didn't build his empire by being gentle. When cornered, men like him fight dirty. By noon, the papers were filed. Victoria checked into the Four Seasons under her maiden name, her hands shaking as she signed the registry. The presidential suite felt like a gilded cage, but it was better than staying in the home that no longer felt like hers. Marcus discovered her absence at 2 p.m. when he returned from his meeting to find divorce papers on his desk and Victoria's wedding ring on the kitchen counter. His roar of anguish could be heard 3 floors down. "This is insane," he raged into his phone, pacing the empty penthouse like a caged animal. "Helena Cross?" She's declaring nuclear war over a lipstick stain? His sister Celeste arrived within the hour, her designer heels clicking against the marble floors with military precision. At 32, she was beautiful in a sharp, predatory way, all angles and ambition wrapped in couture clothing. "Oh, darling," she cooed, embracing him tightly. "I saw the news alerts. This is a disaster." "I didn't cheat on her," Marcus said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I would never—" "God, Celeste, she's carrying my child. How could she think I would do that?" Celeste's perfectly manicured fingers stroked his back soothingly. "Pregnancy hormones can make women irrational. You know how emotional she's been lately. But this lawyer, this Helena Cross, she's poisoning Victoria against you. I need to see her. I need to explain. She won't see you. I already tried calling the hotel. She's blocked your number, hired. Security, the works." Celeste's voice was soft, sympathetic. "But don't worry. I'll handle this. I know women like Helena Cross. They're all about the money, the spectacle. We'll give her a fight she'll never forget." Meanwhile, Victoria sat in her hotel suite, one hand on her belly as she stared out at the city below. The baby was unusually active today, as if he could sense her distress. Her phone buzzed constantly with calls from Marcus, but she couldn't bear to hear his voice. Not yet. Dr. James Morrison, their family physician and longtime friend, arrived at 6 p.m. with his medical bag and a concerned expression. He'd been delivering babies for 30 years, but he'd never seen a patient in Victoria's unique situation. "Your blood pressure is elevated," he said after checking her vitals, "and you're showing signs of extreme stress. This can't be good for the baby." "I know," Victoria whispered, tears streaming down her face. "But I can't go back there. I can't pretend everything is fine when it's not. Victoria, I've known Marcus for 5 years. I've watched him transform since he married you. The man I know would never betray you, especially not now." "Then explain." "The lipstick," she said, her voice breaking. "Explain the late nights, the phone calls, the way he couldn't look me in the eye last night." Dr. Morrison had no answer for that. He prescribed bed rest and mild sedatives, but they both knew that no medicine could heal a broken heart. As night fell over the city, Marcus stood alone in their penthouse, holding one of Victoria's maternity dresses against his chest. The scent of her perfume still lingered on the fabric, and for a moment he could almost pretend she was still there. His phone buzzed with a text from Celeste. "Meeting with our legal team tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll get her back, I promise." But as Marcus looked out at the city lights, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was fighting a war he didn't understand against an enemy he couldn't see. The lipstick stain had been so small, so insignificant. How had it become the weapon that destroyed his world? In her hotel suite, Victoria felt the baby kick strongly, as if he were trying to tell her something. She placed both hands on her belly and whispered, "I'm sorry, little one. I'm so sorry your parents' love story has turned into a tragedy." The war between them had begun, and neither side was prepared for the casualties it would claim. The forensics lab was a sterile temple of science, all white walls and gleaming equipment. Victoria watched through the observation window as technicians analyzed the shirt that had once symbolized her husband's success and now represented her betrayal. "The lipstick contains rare ingredients," Dr. Emma Rodriguez, the lab director, explained. "Carmine derived from cochineal insects, synthetic mica for the metallic finish, and a preservative that's only used in high-end cosmetics. This isn't drugstore makeup, Mrs. Blackwood. This is custom work." Helena Cross leaned forward, her eyes sharp with interest. "Custom work means a paper trail. Someone commissioned this specific shade." Across town, Marcus was conducting his own investigation. Detective Riley Santos, a former police officer turned private investigator, spread photographs across the conference table in Marcus's office. She was a no-nonsense woman with graying hair and intelligent brown eyes, the kind of person who noticed details others missed. "I've analyzed the security footage from your building," Detective Santos said. "Between 8 p.m. and midnight last night, 37 women entered or exited the lobby. Of those, 12 were wearing red lipstick. But here's the interesting part. None of them interacted with you directly." Marcus studied the photos, his frustration mounting. "So either someone I didn't notice bumped into me, or the lipstick was planted," Detective Santos finished. "Which raises the question of who had access to your shirt and why they wanted to destroy your marriage." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Natasha Quinn operated an exclusive cosmetics atelier in the heart of the fashion district, where celebrities and socialites came for bespoke beauty products. Her workspace was an artist's dream, walls lined with pigments, oils, and exotic ingredients from around the world. "This shade is extraordinary," Natasha said, examining a sample of the lipstick under a magnifying glass. "Crimson Desire, I called it. The client was very specific about the formula. It had to be bold, unforgettable, and completely unique." Victoria felt her heart race. "When was this commissioned?" 3 weeks ago. The client paid in cash, wore sunglasses and a hat, very mysterious." Natasha's artistic eye lit up with memory. "But I remember her voice, cultured, confident. She said she wanted a lipstick that could change someone's life." Helena Cross exchanged glances with Victoria. "Did she give a name?" "No, but she did leave something behind." Natasha disappeared into her back room and returned with a small leather glove. "Hermes, very expensive." She must have dropped it. The glove was sent immediately to the lab for DNA analysis, but Victoria's attention was caught by something else. A distinctive pattern in the leather, a small imperfection that she'd seen before. Meanwhile, Marcus was drowning in memories. He'd locked himself in his study, surrounded by photos of his life with Victoria. Their wedding day, when she'd looked like an angel in white silk. Their first anniversary, when they danced on the beach in Santorini. The day they'd found out about the pregnancy, when she'd surprised him with a pair of tiny baby shoes. "You're torturing yourself," Celeste said, entering with a cup of coffee. "She's made her choice. She believed the worst of you without even asking for an explanation." "Because I gave her reason to doubt me," Marcus replied, his voice hollow. The late nights, the secretive phone calls about the merger. I was so focused on providing for our future that I forgot to include her in my present. Celeste set down the coffee and began massaging his tense shoulders. "You work hard because you love her. Any rational woman would understand that." "Victoria isn't just any woman. She's my heart, my soul. Without her—" He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "She'll come to her senses," Celeste murmured, her hands working at the knots in his neck. "Pregnancy hormones make women emotional. Once the baby is born, she'll realize how foolish she's been." But Marcus wasn't convinced. Victoria was many things: passionate, intuitive, fiercely loyal. But she wasn't irrational. If she'd left him, she had reasons that went deeper than a lipstick stain. The DNA results came back 3 days later. The glove contained traces of skin cells, but they didn't match any profiles in the criminal database. However, the lab had made another discovery. The lipstick contained a unique signature, a microscopic polymer that Natasha Quinn added to all her creations as a form of authentication. "This proves the lipstick was definitely from her atelier," Helena explained to Victoria over lunch. "Now we need to find out who commissioned it." Victoria pushed her salad around her plate, her appetite gone. The baby had been unusually quiet today, and she couldn't shake the feeling that her stress was affecting him. What if we're wrong? What if Marcus really is having an affair? Then we'll prove it and make sure you get everything you deserve. Helena said firmly. But something about this feels orchestrated. The timing, the custom lipstick, the fact that it was discovered so easily, it's almost too convenient. That evening, Victoria stood on the balcony of her hotel suite, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The baby kicked gently, and she placed her hand on her belly. "Your daddy and I used to watch sunsets together," she whispered. "He'd hold me from behind, and we'd talk about our dreams for you. He wanted to teach you to play chess, to show you the stars, to be the father he never had." The memory was too painful to bear. Victoria retreated inside, where she found a package waiting for her. Inside was a small device, a baby monitor that could track the baby's heartbeat and movements. The card read, "For our son, love, M." Even in the midst of their war, Marcus was thinking of their child. Victoria held the device against her belly and listened to the steady rhythm of her baby's heart. It was the most beautiful sound in the world, and it reminded her of what they were really fighting for. The truth was out there somewhere, hidden in the shadows of their perfect life. But finding it might cost them everything they'd built together, including the love that had once seemed unbreakable. The revelation came at dawn, delivered by Detective Santos with the urgency of a woman who just uncovered a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of power. Victoria was barely awake when the knock came at her hotel door, her pregnant body protesting the early hour. "We found her," Detective Santos said without preamble, her weathered face grim. "The woman who commissioned the lipstick. You're not going to like this." Victoria's blood ran cold as she stared at the surveillance photos spread across her coffee table. The images showed a tall, elegant woman entering Natasha Quinn's atelier, her face partially obscured by designer sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat. But Victoria recognized the posture, the way she held her shoulders, the distinctive Hermes bag. "Celeste," she whispered, her hand instinctively moving to her belly. It was Celeste. "Marcus's sister has been busy," Detective Santos continued. "We traced her credit cards, her phone records, her meetings. She's been in contact with Richard Hawthorne, the CEO of Hawthorne Industries. They've been planning this for months." Victoria felt the world tilt around her. Richard Hawthorne was Marcus's biggest rival, a ruthless businessman who'd been trying to acquire Blackwood Technologies for years. But Celeste? Celeste was family. She was supposed to love Marcus, to protect him. Why? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. Why? Would she do this? "Money and jealousy," Detective Santos replied. "Marcus changed his will when he married you. Before, Celeste was his primary heir. Now, with you and the baby, she stands to inherit significantly less. Hawthorne offered her $50 million to help him destroy Marcus from the inside." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Celeste's constant undermining, her subtle attempts to drive a wedge between Victoria and Marcus, her insistence that Victoria was too emotional, too unstable for marriage. It had all been calculated manipulation. "We need to tell Marcus," Victoria said, struggling to stand. Her pregnancy made every movement awkward, but determination fueled her. "He needs to know the truth. There's more," Detective Santos said grimly. "Hawthorne's planning to make his move today. He's calling an emergency board meeting to question Marcus's stability as CEO. With you gone and the divorce proceedings public, he's going to argue that Marcus is too distracted to run the company." Victoria's phone buzzed with an urgent text. From her obstetrician, leading reported at front desk. "Come to hospital immediately." Her heart stopped. She wasn't bleeding, which meant someone was impersonating her, trying to get Marcus to the hospital. It's a trap, she realized. They're going to get Marcus alone, vulnerable. We have to warn him. Across town, Marcus was indeed walking into an ambush. Celeste had called him in tears, claiming Victoria had been rushed to the hospital with complications. His world narrowed to a single point of terror as he raced through the hospital corridors, only to find no record of Victoria's admission. "I don't understand," he told the nurse at the desk. "My wife, Victoria Blackwood. She was brought in with bleeding ... Sir, we have no patient by that name," the nurse replied sympathetically. "Perhaps you should check with other hospitals?" Marcus's phone rang. Celeste's voice was strained with fake concern. "Darling, I'm so sorry. I got confused. She's at Presbyterian, not here. I'll meet you there." But as Marcus turned to leave, he spotted something that made his blood freeze. Through the hospital's glass doors, he could see Richard Hawthorne sitting in a black sedan, speaking urgently into his phone. The man who'd been trying to destroy him for years was here, at the hospital. At the exact moment, Marcus had been lured here by false information. The trap was closing, but Marcus was no longer the naive target they'd expected. Years of ruthless business dealings had honed his instincts, and right now, every instinct was screaming danger. Instead of leaving, Marcus ducked into a supply closet and called his head of security. "Lock down the building. No one in or out of my office. And find my wife. Find her now." Victoria was already on her way, Detective Santos driving, while Helena Cross worked her phone with the intensity of a general commanding troops. The DNA evidence, the financial records, the surveillance footage, they had enough to bury Celeste and Hawthorne, but only if they could reach Marcus before the conspiracy reached its climax. "He's not at the hospital," Helena reported. "My contact there says he left through the emergency exit. Smart man." Victoria's phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen, and her heart lurched. She'd blocked his number days ago, but somehow he was getting through. "Victoria?" His voice was rough with emotion. "Thank God. Are you safe?" "I'm safe," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Marcus, I know about Celeste. I know about everything. She's been working with Hawthorne to destroy us. I know. I figured it out when I saw Hawthorne at the hospital. Victoria, I need you to know I never betrayed you. I never even looked at another woman. You and our baby are everything to me. I know," she whispered. "I should have trusted you. I should have." Her words were cut off by a sudden sharp pain in her abdomen. The stress, the running around, the emotional trauma, it was all too much. She doubled over as another contraction hit, this one stronger than the first. "The baby," she gasped. "Marcus, the baby's coming?" Detective Santos swerved toward the nearest hospital as Victoria's labor began in earnest. The conspiracy had brought them to this moment. Their child would be born in the midst of their war, but at least they would face it together. "I'm coming," Marcus said, his voice fierce with determination. "I'm coming to you right now. Hold on, sweetheart. Hold on for me." The truth was finally out, but the real battle was just beginning. Their enemies had underestimated the power of love, the strength of a family fighting for their future. Celeste and Hawthorne had started this war, but Marcus and Victoria were going to finish it. The delivery room was a sanctuary of controlled chaos, all beeping monitors and urgent voices. But Victoria was aware of only one thing, Marcus's hand gripping hers as another contraction peaked. He'd arrived at the hospital 20 minutes after her, his face pale with terror and love. "You're doing beautifully," Dr. Emma Rodriguez encouraged, her skilled hands working as Victoria labored to bring their son into the world. "I can see his head. One more push." Victoria bore down with every ounce of strength she possessed, and suddenly the room filled with the most beautiful sound in the world, their baby's first cry. Marcus broke down completely, tears streaming down his face as Dr. Rodriguez placed their son on Victoria's chest. "He's perfect," Victoria whispered, her voice hoarse from labor. He's absolutely perfect. The baby was indeed perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a cap of dark hair like his father's, and lungs that proclaimed his arrival to the world. Marcus traced one finger along his son's cheek, his touch infinitely gentle. "Hello, Oliver," he whispered. "I'm your daddy. I've been waiting so long to meet you." For a moment, the conspiracy, the betrayal, the pain of the past week faded into nothing. They were a family, complete and whole, bonded by love and the miracle of new life. The peace was shattered by the sound of shouting in the corridor. The door, they could hear Celeste's voice, sharp with panic. "You have to let me see him. He's my brother." "Not after what you did." Helena Cross's voice was ice cold. "Detective Santos, I believe you have something from his winters." Marcus kissed Victoria's forehead gently. "Stay with Oliver. I'll handle this." "We'll handle it together," Victoria corrected, though she didn't move from the bed. "She's your sister." "Marcus, this is going to hurt you more than it hurts me." The confrontation took place in the hospital's family conference room, with Oliver sleeping peacefully in Victoria's arms while the adults settled accounts. Celeste sat across from them, her perfect composure finally cracking under the weight of her exposure. "How could you?" Marcus's voice was quiet, deadly. "How could you do this to us, to your own nephew?" "You don't understand," Celeste said, her voice breaking. "You changed after you married her. You stopped needing me. I was your partner, your confidant, and suddenly I was just the sister you called when you needed something. So you decided to destroy my marriage? To hurt the woman I love and endanger my child?" Marcus stood, his presence filling the room with barely contained rage. "You took money from Richard Hawthorne to betray your own family. $50 million, Detective Santos added, consulting her notes. "Paid in installments over 6 months. We have all the records, all the communications. You're looking at conspiracy, fraud, and emotional damages that will run into the hundreds of millions." Celeste's facade finally crumbled completely. "I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted to make Victoria doubt you, to make her leave so you'd come back to me. But then she filed for divorce, and Richard said it was perfect, that the board would lose confidence in you. And you thought that was acceptable?" Victoria spoke for the first time, her voice surprisingly calm. "You thought destroying a marriage and traumatizing a pregnant woman was an acceptable price for your jealousy?" "I'm sorry," Celeste whispered, mascara running down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I love you, Marcus. I just wanted things to go back to the way they were." "They can never go back," Marcus said, his voice final. "You're no longer my sister. You're no longer welcome in my life or my family's life. Security will escort you out." As Celeste was led away, sobbing, Victoria felt a strange mixture of pity and relief. The woman who tried to destroy them was broken, defeated by her own jealousy and greed. But the damage she'd caused would take time to heal. "The board meeting has been postponed," Helena reported, checking her phone. "Richard Hawthorne is being arrested as we speak. His hostile takeover is dead in the water." 3 months later, Victoria stood in the penthouse nursery, watching Marcus change Oliver's diaper with the practiced efficiency of a devoted father. Their son was thriving, a happy baby with his father's intense gaze and his mother's gentle spirit. "He's going to be brilliant," Marcus said, lifting Oliver to his shoulder. "Look at how he studies everything, like he's trying to figure out how the world works." "He gets that from you," Victoria said, moving to stand beside them. "The curiosity, the determination to understand everything." They'd been through counseling, long conversations about trust and forgiveness. The conspiracy had damaged them, but it had also proved the strength of their love. They'd faced their worst nightmare and emerged stronger. "I have something for you," Marcus said, setting Oliver in his crib and turning to Victoria. "I was going to wait until our anniversary, but I can't wait any longer." He pulled out a small velvet box and Victoria's breath caught. Inside was not a ring, but a delicate pendant, a golden heart with 3 small diamonds. "One for you, one for me, and one for Oliver," he explained, his hands shaking slightly as he fastened it around her neck. "I know we can't undo what happened, but I want to start fresh. I want to renew our vows, to promise you again that you're the only woman I'll ever love." Victoria touched the pendant, feeling its warmth against her skin. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to everything. To fresh starts, to new promises, to loving you for the rest of my life." Their second wedding was intimate, held in the penthouse with only their closest friends present. Oliver slept in Victoria's arms as she and Marcus exchanged new vows, promises born from pain and strengthened by forgiveness. "I promise to trust you," Victoria said, her voice strong and clear. "To communicate instead of assuming, to fight for. Use instead of fighting against us." "I promise to include you in everything," Marcus replied. "To make you my partner in all things, to never let work come between us again." As they kissed, sealing their renewed commitment, Oliver stirred in Victoria's arms and opened his eyes. For a moment, he seemed to look directly at his parents, as if blessing their second chance at happiness. The crimson lipstick stain that had nearly destroyed them was gone, replaced by something stronger, a love that had been tested by fire, and emerged as pure as gold. They were no longer the naive couple who thought love was enough. They were seasoned partners who knew that love required work, trust, and the courage to fight for each other. Outside their windows, the city glittered with possibility. Inside their home, a family built on truth and renewed trust looked toward a future bright with promise. The conspiracy had tried to tear them apart, but in the end, it had only made them stronger. Love, Victoria realized as she held her husband and son, wasn't just about the fairy tale beginning. It was about choosing each other every day, especially when everything seemed lost. It was about believing that some things were worth fighting for, worth forgiving for, worth rebuilding from the ashes. Their story had begun with a crimson betrayal, but it would continue with a golden promise, the promise of a love that could survive anything, even the worst that people could do to tear it apart.